Now, as far as the homework part goes and turning in homework, I just wanted to go over that part with you really quickly. So the way my file naming convention works, hang on one second, let me go to our assignments really quickly. So the assignment to turn in the castle was this one right here. It's assignment 2.4. And what the assignments ask you to do, or all of them, the way I want all of them named when you actually turn them in, this is written up in a number of places, but if you actually look at the student start here, it just takes you to the very top of the module page. And it says right here, I mean, this is what it's all about. Every assignment turned in should be labeled as last name underscore first name underscore assignment number, and then if there's an image number, if you guys have multiple images, like for instance the multiple DNG profiles, all of that. If you don't want to name each individual one of those files, you can actually just name a folder that's got that assignment number and throw all four into it. I'm fine with that part. Do me a favor though, don't throw all of week 2 assignments into one single folder. It means I have to go in and pull it all out and rename it, and please don't do that for me. But for instance, the assignment, I'm forgetting which one it was like assignment 2.2 or something like that. Let me see which one it is. Yeah, there is this assignment, create a custom DNG profile for each caption, such that there's 4 of those that are going to be due, right? You can throw all of those 4 into a single folder that's named correctly for the assignment, and you'll be good to go. Are there questions about this? So it kind of looks like this. So for me, if I was going to turn in the CAS one, what did I just say? Was that assignment 2.4?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would name this Engelhard underscore Verser underscore 2.4. And that's it. Make sense? Pretty easy. We're going to, if you haven't named all your stuff right now, we're going to jump into other stuff. Don't bother about doing that part right now. We just need to get it done before the end of the day, okay? Then I'm going to pass around a hard drive. I'm sorry, I really wish there was a more convenient way of doing this, but I don't know any more convenient way to do this. So at any rate, I'm going to pass around that hard drive. It's the one that's called Verser 250 SSD. Inside of that, there is a folder called SAIC Dropbox. Just grab your file and throw it in there, and well, we should be good to go. And if you really hate one of your friends or neighbors, whatever, take their file out and throw it away, and they'll get done. So where I would like to start today is actually with that homework file that you did, the Castle file. Does everybody have their copy of that? Okay, I'd like you to go ahead and open that guy up for me if you don't mind. So today being all about selections, I want to show you, there's a couple, I want to show you about making better selections. Once you've actually generated one, how to actually fix one. And part of what I'm going to show you right now is a little bit old school. It's actually, as a matter of fact, Photoshop, it's a technique that Photoshop doesn't feel like is of any value any longer, so they've hidden it. I'm going to show you guys how to find it again, because I think in some ways, depending on the chore that you've got, refining an edge in one way is different than refining an edge in another way. We're going to look at refining edges 2 different ways today, possibly 3, and then there's going to be some more advanced ways to refine edges that we'll get on down the line, but that's kind of what's going on here. So if everybody can zoom in, what I'd like you to do is you should basically have these 3 layers. I'm going to ask you to turn the castle one off. And it doesn't really matter. It just, I'm trying to keep this less confusing than not, and to just look at this as if we're only working on 2 layers. So I just think that that might simplify things slightly. So if you select the top layer should be the one that was actually the sky. Does everybody have this? Does anybody not have this? Because I can throw out a copy of this if somebody needs, because I want you working on this. So you need a copy of this guy, right? All right, hang on one second really quickly. Because again, even if you haven't done it or you don't have it to turn in, all right. So it's the one that's in that SAIC Dropbox folder called Engelhard. You can probably just open it straight from the hard drive. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so what I'd like to do really quickly is just give you a quick tour of some of the things that are going on here and the ways to look at certain things in here as well. Again, if you hold down the space bar and the command key, you get the magnifying glass tool, no matter what tool you have. Like, so for instance, right now, I've got the four-sided arrow thing at the very top. It's the move tool. The keyboard shortcut for that is the B key. But at any rate, no matter what tool you have, so for instance, if you clicked on the quick selection tool, still holding down the spacebar and the command key temporarily gives you the magnifying glass. If you add the option key to that, it's the negative magnifying glass. But it allows you to actually come in, and I'm going to ask you to zoom into this area that is the grass on the far left side of your picture. And you can see that we have a problem right there. The mask is actually pretty inexact. Again, the quick selection tool did a relatively good job. But if we take a look at our masks, you'll see that there is a problem with part of this guy as well. There's something else I want to look at really fast as well here too. That part's actually okay. All right, let me zoom back out. So you can see that there's a problem right there. If you hold down, okay, so wait, I need to go back to this again because today is going to be all about this. And if there's any confusion or doubt or I'm not really sure, about masks, I need to know that now. Are we all good and comfortable with what masks are and what they do? Okay, so in this case right here, in this area where it is black in this mask, it's hiding that. That's why we don't see that dark grass, we see the lighter grass. In the area where it's white, we actually see the part of this file we process, the darker part of that. And if we had areas of gray in here, they would be semi-transparent. So the black here is nothing, the white is everything. Grays in between give you gradations of visibility. Does that sort of make sense? All right, we're all good on that, right? Okay. So if you hold down your option key and click on the mask itself, it'll show it to you. And you can see in here where we've got certain issues in here. Most of it is a relatively hard edge, and that's actually the problem that we've got. The grass in here is really much softer, and so that's an issue. The edge around the building seems pretty good, but we're going to actually take a look and examine that later on. And as we get to another part of the image, we're also going to see that there's a problem in that as well. So if you want to go back to your normal view of just the image, simply click on the image icon. And you can tell we're working on the image icon right now because of these little white brackets that are around it. If we wanted to work directly on the mask, you would click on the mask and you would put the little white brackets around it. And at this stage of the game, then we could go in and we could paint on the mask. So let's all see what that looks like. If you select a mask to make it active, hit the B key to get a brush. Check always. The minute you click on a brush, and I'm going to tell you this every single class we do, anytime you change a tool, your eyes should jump up here to the top and you should be looking at the options toolbar up here. Because oftentimes, all these tools up here, these options up here are sticky. And as a consequence, if you, say, set a very low opacity for a brush for some reason, working on a file yesterday, and you open up another file in Photoshop today and you start to work on it, and you don't understand why things aren't quite working, and it's probably because your opacity has dropped down too low. It's not what you really expected it to be. Does it sort of make sense? So your eyes always jump up here. For me, I always immediately click on this drop-down menu right here because this shows me the quality of my brush. And in this case, again, these are the 6 brushes that most people use. In the case of this class right now, until we get a little bit deeper in here, you're only going to use these first 2. And to be really honest with you, I don't even use those. I don't use the presets at all. All I do is come up here and actually work with the hardness of the brush. If I want a really soft brush, I put it at 0. If I want a really hard brush, I crank it up to 100. If I want a medium soft brush, I put it at 50. If I want a sort of harder brush, but not completely, I'll put it at 75, and so on. You guys get that, right? It's just a simpler way. Now, again, if you're a tablet person, we are going to get into tablets at a certain stage of the game in this class. However, again, I would argue that until you get incredibly proficient at it, using pressure to control size and opacity becomes a very tricky thing. So at any rate, just to throw that part out there. So I'm going to leave this as a completely, let's go do as a completely hard brush. You might as well look at it. Again, to get rid of this drop-down menu without affecting your image, without making a mark on your image, click on the word Adobe. It flies away. Make sure that your blending mode for this brush is normal, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and you can leave smoothing at this 10%. That's at its default. If we come over now, again, I'm working on my layer mask. This is my brush right here. I don't see anything but a crosshair. When I look up, it looks like my brush is extremely big. It looks like it's an 1100 pixel brush. So I use the bracket keys just to the right of the P key to actually make my brush bigger or smaller. And I'm actually making my brush smaller now using the key immediately to the right of the P key. That's the one that actually makes it smaller. Hit the D key to make your default colors of your foreground and background at their default. And then again, we are going to paint with black on this white area up here because I just want to show you that it's the inverse of it. So if you hit the X key, black becomes your foreground color, and then making sure you're working on your layer mask, you can actually paint this out and you'll see that it takes us back to, that's actually the original sky that's actually under there, which is amazing to me. How can that possibly be? Wow, that sky has nothing in it. Okay, so at any rate, if you've done this, again, depending on the version of Photoshop that you're using and how you've got it set up, doing undos in Photoshop, in the older versions of Photoshop, if you hold down Command key and hit Z, it will undo your last move. If you hit Z again, it will bring that move back, and it's just back and forth between those two. If you want to go back progressively in history, you have to add the Option key to that. So Command Option Z takes you back one step, back to the next step, back to the next step, back to the next step. It steps you back through history. In the latest version of Photoshop, they flip that. In the latest version of Photoshop now, unless you change a preference, what happens if you just hit Command Z, you're constantly stepping back in history. And if you hit Command Option Z, you're alternating between just those two states. Does that make sense? Are we good on that? If you, no, go ahead.
I'm doing something weird.
Yeah, sure. Cancel out of that. That's so weird. Anyway, just put it back on the open. This was going to be the last thing I said to you, was just go back in history. We'll look at that later. So at any rate, if you can't remember any of that, or you hate all of that, that's why your history palette is visible to you right now. It's simply right over here. And you can see the history states that we've actually come back through. And I want you to, we're going to come back all the way to open. Speaking of, while we are here, this is a major one. So remember this one, write this one down. This is because this is yet again, I have an issue with Photoshop, with Adobe, because they have not done this. Again, you would think that this would be something that you would set preferences. It's not. And so what it is the preferences for your history. If you come over to your history palette and you click on the little menu icon that's on the right-hand side of this palette and drop it open, you will come open and you will have a history options that sits right down here. I need everybody to open that up. The things that are on by default is this automatically create new snapshot automatically create first snapshot. That's on by default. However, automatically create new snapshot when saving is not on by default. You definitely want to turn that on. And then also what's not on by default is this show new snapshot dialog by default. You want to enable that. This will come into play in a big way in the not this class, but in a few classes from now. You'll see this comes to play in quite a bit. So I just want to make sure everybody goes ahead and gets this set up like this to begin with.
Would that save to your workspace?
It will be saved on your computer, your version. This goes into it's saved on in the preferences of Photoshop on your machine. So that's where it is.
So did you want us to check all three of those?
No, I didn't want you to check all three. So hang on one second. So I want you to check these three. Those guys right there. You don't want to do nonlinear history. I don't want to really get into exactly why that is right now. Once we get into working with history in a deeper way, I'll explain why that might be something you want to avoid. Okay. So that gives us a little bit of tour around here, but we actually see the problem that we've got right here. So how many of you ever used the old refine edge tool or the old refine mask tool? So you guys, some people are a little bit familiar with it. Some of you guys may have never seen it. Photoshop got rid of it when they brought in the Select and Mask workspace, which we are also going to look at today. But in my opinion, the old Refine tool, the technology is based on the very same thing. So it's not like one is better. It's just the interface is very different. So we're going to do the old interface. I'm going to show you guys how to get that. And it's weird how this works. But again, this is the keyboard shortcut for it. And it's the only way I know to get to it. So the way you get to it is you've got a select menu right here. If you click on the select menu and come down, you'll see that in the middle of the menu is something called select and mask. That's not what I want you to do yet. What I want you to do is hold down the shift key first. Now you don't see anything change, but holding down the shift key and coming down to select and mask brings up the old refine mask tool. And in my opinion, this is a better place to start. Again, I think the Select and Mask workspace is extremely powerful and it has a place. We're going to look at it today. We're actually going to use it for one of our assignments. However, I wanted to show you this one first because I think this explains what's going on a little bit. It's a little bit easier to see. So to start with the Select and Mask works. Oh, I'm sorry. Hey. What do you come up with?
It's just a different menu. It just looks different, but it's not the same options.
Yeah, no, you're in the Select and Mask workspace, so you need to cancel out of that. Let's try this again. That's what we're heading to later. Okay, so hold on the shift key first. Good, and then onto Select, and onto Select and Mask. That's true. Over here. Okay. No, all right, so we're still gonna get out of there. Okay, so hold on the shift key. Go up and do select and mask. That's not your shift key. That's a weird keyboard. Oh, there it is. That's what you're looking for. Yes. Okay, so turn that out off. All right, make sure that the top menu is selected. Is that missing? No. What's weird is that you've got a mask on the grass, which we should have. So you're good to go. So you're on this layer right now. Again, hold on the shift key, go up to the select menu, come down to select and mask, and no, too soon. Cancel out here. Okay, cancel. Hold on shift key. Shut it one more time.
Should be on.
Sure. So, first things first, with this refine mask, there is a view that we need to set here to begin with. And if you click on the view drop-down menu right here, you want to bring this down to on layers. And what on layers does is it actually shows you the result is what you're going to see. So what we're looking at in our image now, you'll actually see the changes that we're making. There's other views that you could do. So for instance, you could look at it on black. And what this is simply saying is, it's looking at this mask right here, and it's instead of the area that's hidden, it's making it black, and it's showing it to you. If you pick on white, it does it on white. If you pick it this way, the black and white, that's actually showing you the mask itself. But in our case, I want to really see what's going on because that's the feedback that I want. So I'm looking at this edge right here, and I can tell that there's a problem. Does that make sense? However, if you look at this really quickly on the black and white part, you see this edge right here? This is the thing that we are going to refine. Again, refining masks has nothing to do with this area up here. It's got nothing to do with this down here. It's all about this transition. Does that make sense? Okay, so the refine mask tool, you need to know a little bit about the way this thing works. Believe it or not, there was a group of high school kids who developed this algorithm to detect edges. And the people in the building saw it and loved it and bought it and made these kids a fortune. And they rolled it into this thing, and it is the refined tool. And they still use this algorithm today. I'm sure Adobe's refined it a little bit, but anyway, so this is coming from, can you imagine this? Some 16, 18-year-old kid owns this group. Anyway, crazy. But here's the trick to it. It does one thing, and that's it. And you say, run this algorithm, run this little bit of software on this, or don't run it anywhere else. That's all you do. It's an on or off thing. There's no strength to it. There's no reason to do it twice. It's not cumulative. It either works or it doesn't work. So our job is to tell Photoshop where we want to run this thing. Does that sort of make sense? Are we good on that part? Okay, so I'm going to again go back to say, show this on layers. And I'm going to move this a little bit to the side, so hopefully you can see this. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to actually do up here is we're going to click on this checkbox that says Show Radius. And you'll see that your image goes completely black. And the reason it's going completely black is that we haven't told Photoshop where we want to run this algorithm at all. So right now it's not going to run on anything because we haven't said this is where I want you to run it. If you grab the radius slider right here and click and start to drag it across and let go, so I came to like 4 pixels. You can see it's tracing that border where that white part of the mask met the black part of the mask. And you can see as we continue to drag this forward even more, radius forward, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm just saying, okay, I want you to run that really special, teenage algorithm on this area right here. And it just continues like that. You can actually get it to go bigger, you can get it to go smaller, you can get it to go up. I will tell you this right now, Smart Radius is for stupid people because only stupid people would use it. Don't use it. Just that easy to say, right? They should just put on their stupid radius instead of smart, but anyway, don't use it. It doesn't help. So this is what radius is all about. If you actually, again, still even in this dialog box, if you hold down your spacebar and command key and the option key, you can zoom out and you can see that this is the radius that's actually being drawn. So it's doing this area that's actually around here. Does that sort of make sense to everybody? Okay, so I'm going to turn off show radius. And you can come in and you can actually see what it's done. So it's actually, the algorithm has already run. So you can see that it actually did help this area up here in the top quite a bit. I'm not really sure what it did to the castle. The problem with this dialog box though is there's no apparent preview. There's no way to go back and see what the original was. Oh, yep, but there is. If you click on this checkbox that says Show Original, this shows you what things were before and what things are now, and what they were before and what they are now. And you can see that in some ways it's done a reasonably good job on the heathery part over here, but in my opinion it's been way too aggressive on the castle part. If I look at what's going on in here, there was parts on the top of this castle because the radius on there is so large it's actually just being too aggressive on that. I'm holding down the shift key alone the space bar alone right now to get the hand, which lets me move around and look in this image. And as I start to look over here and the rest of this image part here, again, I'm going back to show original and turn this part off. And you can see that it's actually decimated the treetops right here. Those things have been nailed pretty well. They're just gone. And then also this whole sort of like, I don't know what you call this, whatever the far distant hill thing is, that guy over there has also taken a pretty bad hit in terms of, I think that this detail is actually supposed to be, I think that that's all supposed to be in there. So in looking at this image, what I realize, I'm going to show you the radius again as I zip back here. I'm going to click on Uncheck Show Original, turn this on. What's happening to me, or at least the way I see it, is that it did a very good job in this area right in here. It's too aggressive on the castle. It's too aggressive in this area right in here. And then this just shouldn't be happening at all. So again, the trick to using this tool is telling Photoshop where you want it to run and where you don't want it to run. Does that make sense? So we are going to refine this a little bit better. I want to come in to begin with and just look at the castle. So zoom in and look at the castle. And I'm going to drag this radius line quite a bit down because I want it just barely to hit the outside edge of this castle. So I've brought mine down to a radius of about 3 pixels, something like that. It just hits the edge of the castle, and that's actually the way I think I want it to run. Again, I'm going to turn off my show radius right now, and I'm going to use my show original on and off, and you can see that it's basically just taken that little bit of highlight edge right off the top of the castle. But it didn't beat the shit out of this of all the you know, the brick or the stonework that's in here. It's left all that intact. It just was that little bit of edge. So if I hold down the space bar and come over here again and look, but I've got a problem now. So I think it did a good job on the castle, but it's not aggressive enough to get this area of the heather or the whatever the grass thing here. So I need to fix that. To fix that, you use a brush here. So the brush is this guy right here. If you click on this brush, click on the lower right-hand corner of it, you'll see that there are actually 2 options here. There is the Refine Radius tool and the Erase Refinements. We're going to look at them both, but I want you to select the Refine Radius tool. It is a brush. Again, there's no strength to this brush. There's no opacity to this brush. There's no flow to this. You're strictly saying, Photoshop, run that algorithm on this or don't run it on that. And that is all you're saying. So we're just trying to define the area we want it run. So that really small radius gave me a good little bit around the castle. But if you take a look again at radius right here and you see what's going on with the heather part, it's not big enough here. It needs to be bigger here. You do that with the brush. Now, I'm going to do this so you can actually see it, and then we'll look and see what happened. So I've got a brush that's about the size of a pencil. The other thing about this tool is you do not want to use it on a place that you don't want to run that algorithm. It's destructive. And so you only want to use it where you want to use it. So don't come in here with some big-ass brush and start painting just this big old thing because you know it doesn't matter. Photoshop will take care of it. Photoshop's not that good. Okay, so at any rate, mine's about the size of a pencil eraser, and I'm simply going to come over to here, and I'm going to click and paint, and you'll see that things are getting much, much, much worse. You'll also notice that the brush goes away, which is kind of a drag, but anyway. I'm going to bring this all the way down to the edge of the castle. Hopefully you guys are doing this exact same thing with me. And I'm going to then let go. It's going to recalculate, and you can see that now I've got a much, much, much better edge here. If you turn on Show Radius, you'll see what it is we just did. We painted a much bigger area of this. And some people would say this is actually a little too big, although it's really beginning to incorporate all this area that's up here on the far left-hand side here. So it's pretty much the size that I need to get to the brush. But you'll notice that my radius around the castle was the one that was determined by the radius slider right here. So that part's actually still working for me. So the point that I'm trying to stress here is that you can have multiple areas. You can have bigger areas, smaller areas. You can have all the above in here. I'm going to turn off Show Radius again. Again, if you turn on Show Original, you'll see how much better that has actually made that edge. Okay. Hold down the space bar to get the hand. Come back over to the other side. I'm just going to take a look around the other side of the castle, this other edge of the castle. Again, I'm turning on Show Original, take this off, Show Original. I feel like at the very top here, it's actually clipping off a little bit of this guy at the very top. It's those 2 little prong things that are sitting right up there. Again, if I turn on my Show Radius, this is where the problem is this little part right in here. So again, I'm going to do my Show Original back and forth on this. Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's all along that entire top edge, this whole top edge right here. So in this case, in those areas, I want to remove that little radius line and see what happens. I think that the original might actually be better in this area. So to do that, you click on the other brush, the Erase Refinements tool, and then I'm going to turn off Show Original, and I'm going to bring it over to this area right here. This is now going to remove that little radius line. So I'm going to click and drag across this and let go. And this is now where I'm at. And you can see again, if I show my radius, this is what I did. I simply removed that radius line from right here. So the algorithm is being run on all of this. It's being run on all of this and all of this. And on the other side is the big bunch of bushes all there. But it's not being run on this area. I just removed it from there. And I feel like it's better. What do you think? Yeah. Okay. Turn off show radius again. There's serious trouble down here in the treetops. If you click on your show original again, you can see that there was a lot down in here that was actually much better than this. So again, I'm going to remove the radius line all along there and see what happens. I think I brush a little bit smaller, and I'm simply going to drag along the top and see if I like what I just changed. And you don't need to do it all in one swoop. Command Z works in the Refine tool edge as well, so in the Refine Mask tool. So Command Z will take you back. Command Z will bring you back again. I think that there were holes that were being made in the very top of that tree. It was sort of like cutting the top off from the bottom part. The bottom part. I mean, when you look at this here, look. I'm going to zoom in really close. This is what I'm talking about. There's like, so what? These are like floating tree things in here. That's not real. Right? So Command Z takes those guys out. It's a better edge. Maybe not perfect, but a better edge. So again, I've got the very same issue that's happening along this area. Zoom back out. I'm going to finish painting through all the trees because I think it's pervasive in all of them. And that gets me to the end of the trees. I'm going to zoom back out using my command keyboard shortcuts. And again, use my show original and show new. I don't see a whole lot of changes happening over here. I'm zoomed out a little bit too much. But I want to take a look at the thing that's going along the top right here. So this is what the original was. This is what this top edge looks like. If I take this off, this is what my new one does. And again, that white line that's sitting up at the top, it's just been too aggressive up there. So you don't, if you feel like you know this area that you simply need to get rid of it, you don't even have to look at it in real time. You can simply click on the erase tool, click on the show radius, and I'm going to make it, this is a giant tool now. I'm going to make it a giant brush, and I'm simply going to get rid of all of this because I don't think it belongs there. Make sure you get all the way to the edge. So I'm going to zip back out. This is what I said I thought I should do. Does this make sense? So again, what I'm saying is everywhere you see these little white, I'm saying run your magic algorithm on this. Look at this up here. What's this? That's my brush. It could have been a mistake, and if it was, I would just paint it out. Does this make sense what's going on here? Okay, so then this guy's ready to go. It's done its job. However, there's a couple of options that we've got in here. And the first are these guys right down here, this adjust edge and smooth and feather and all that kind of stuff. If you guys have used this in the past, I'm telling you right now, I'm simplifying this tool for you, you're not going to use this. There's better tools to do that kind of work with. So just forget about that shit. Don't bother with it. You don't need it. However, in the part down here, decontaminate colors, there's also better ways to do that. Now, sometimes I will use this because I get lazy. Most of the time, I'll actually do the work manually myself. Again, we're going to get to that today as well. However, how this is actually output does matter, and there's a couple of options in this. One, you could say, I just want the new work that you just did kicked out as a selection. We're not going to do that. The second one is you can say actually output it to the layer mask, and what it's going to do is actually change this layer mask. And if you're okay with this thing being modified, then we can go ahead and do that. And it'll simply modify this mask, and we're good to go. Now, in my opinion, I think it's worth it because I think it's better. But if for some reason you had spent a month building this mask and you were nervous that this tool was just going to fuck it all up, then instead of doing this, you would actually do a new layer with a layer mask. Does that make sense? However, the things that you don't want to do is this, new layer, because what new layer will do is it will actually take this thing, it will build a new layer, but then it will apply your mask, which is a destructive move. I am going to tell you, you're going to read this in every single assignment that I give you. Do not remove your layer masks and apply them. Do not remove your layer masks and apply them. You guys know what I mean by that? If you take your layer mask and drag it down to the trash, the dialog box will open up and say, do you want to cancel this, meaning you want to keep it? Do you want to discard your mask, or do you want to apply it? And apply it means that wherever there is areas of black, that part of your image is actually removed. And there's no undoing that once you save your file. Are we good on this part? So it's a destructive move. We do not do destructive moves in this class, yes.
What was the one you don't want to press?
You don't want to press this new layer right here. Layer mask is okay, selection is okay. Again, selection, there's no real reason to use it. But nonetheless, new layer is the one you don't want to do. So a new layer with layer mask you can use. A new document you don't want to do, because a new document will create a whole copy of this image, but again, it will apply layer masks. You don't want to do that. And then finally, a new document with a layer mask is a viable option. Again, I don't really know why you would want to do that, but at least it's not destructive. We good on this? So for me, I'm just going to go ahead and do it to the layer mask, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So I'm going to click on layer mask and say OK. And you can see now this has actually been refined, and this is what my new one looks like, and I've actually got a much better guy going. Are there questions about this? Yes?
If you wanted to do like a before and after to save that, could you save that mask as its own selection in a channel?
Of course you could.
And then that way that's like an extra.
Of course you could. Of course you could. But possibly a better way, if you really want to look at it before and after, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but we might as well do it now. How many of you guys use history snapshots? Well, that's going to change right now. If you come over to your history palette and you actually click on this little camera, it'll open up and it'll say it's going to create a new snapshot for me. This is one of the things that we did when we actually changed the options in history. One of the things we did was to actually make it so that when you click on that snapshot, instead of just giving you a snapshot and naming them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, it actually brings up a dialog that you can name this. And so what I would name this is post-refine mask. And say OK. And then you see at the very top, we have 2 history states now, what are called 2 history states. We've got one that's actually got the name of my file. Yours will be different. It's whatever the name of your file was when you opened it. It gets stamped with the name of the actual file. That's what's going on right here. But then these things, the other history states, are actually named according to what we just named them. If you click on the first history state, the one that's at the very top, it goes back to what the image looked like before, including the opacity of the castle. And then click on the refined mask, whatever, it goes back to the state where we're at right now. So it's 2 ways to go about that. So kind of let's say that you wanted to, you're like, oh fuck, I should have saved that first mask. It was so much better. Or I should have saved it. I want to save both of these, right? You can do that. So I need everybody to do this with me. Go to your original history state. Come over to the mask. This is what the mask looked like in the very beginning before we refined it, right? If you hold down, again, do not click on the mask like that. You don't need to click on it. Just hover your cursor over it, hold down the command key, and click once, and it loads that mask as a selection. Come up to the Select menu, and come down to Save Selection, and call this Original Mask, or Original Sky Mask, O-R, I have no idea how to spell O-R-I-G-O. And say Save. Command D to deselect, then go to your Refine Mask state, come back over to the very same thing, Command click to load it, up to the Select menu, down to Save Selection, and call it Refine Sky Mask. And say OK. Command D to deselect. Both of those masks that you just saved are sitting right down here at the bottom. Here's the sky mask that's, there's my refined sky mask. Where's my other one? Oh, you know what, again, this is nonlinear history. This is the problem that we've got. When I saved the first one, when I went to my second state, it actually got rid of my first mask. So, again, something you would want to do in step-by-step. We would want to go in time and actually refine those masks in time. If it was really important to me, I would simply go back into history before I did the refinement, save the mask, re-refine it, save it again. Make sense? Are we good on this, guys? All right, you can close that guy up. We don't need him anymore. We don't need to save him either. The next thing I want you to look for is if in our the files for this class, the assignment files, and in class number 3, I hope it's there. It's not. Hang on. 4. Sorry guys, we're jumping a little bit ahead, and I could have sworn. All right, well, I'll put this off and we'll just do that when we come back after the break. Okay, there is a file in here though that I do need you guys to open up really quickly. And it's this, if you come in here, it's this gradients.psd. That's the first one I want to go after. Not the version 2, but the version, just the regular gradients.png. Again, if this opens up and you can see it doesn't quite fill my screen, it's actually at 100%, but if you double click the hand, it will actually enlarge to complete that. So I just want to show you a couple tricks. Most of you guys are very familiar with the selection tool, the marquee tool, the lasso tool. You all are familiar with that part, right? Is everybody familiar with adding to selections using the shift key and subtracting using the option key? Is anybody not familiar with that? We can go over it really quick. We're all good? Okay, one of the things though that's weird that a lot of people don't know is, let's say I want to actually select this red, completely select the red stripe. So if you hit the M key, that is the marquee tool, and do you guys ever have trouble that you get over here like this, you're trying to get right to that edge, and instead of it being the tool, then it becomes the cursor again? Does that happen to you? It happens to me all the time, right? If you hit the F key, you go to what's called the pasteboard. The pasteboard allows you to have tools outside of your image. So you can see I just went to this pasteboard right here. I'm going to hold down the space bar to temporarily get the hand, and I can actually move it over here. And you can see I've still got a marquee tool that's sitting well outside the image. So I don't need to worry about hitting that edge anymore. Does that sort of make sense? If you hit the F key again, it actually takes you to the black pasteboard. You lose all the you still have tools, but you lose all the palettes. The F key one more time takes you back to the full screen that you're normal, that is normal for you. That has a little, the stoplights up at the top. However, for me, an easier way to deal with this, at least this specific problem we're going to talk about now, is to use a trick that very few people know, and it's really simple. And if you know it, it's just like, oh my God. So I want to select a perfect selection of this red. Would that be challenging for you with the marquee tool to get it perfect? It is, because you're over here in the corner, you're trying to eyeball it, and then all of a sudden you're like, it changes to the cursor. It's not easy to do, right? So instead, watch me, and then I want you all to do it. Simply come up here to the top and click and drag out. Keep your mouse down. Don't let go. Hold down the space bar. You can now actually move this guy, and you want to simply line the top left corner up. Now you'll see that you get this purple line. That's simply telling you that your selection has hit the edge, which is exactly what we want. Then let go of the space bar and set the bottom right hand corner, and you have a perfect selection of the red. The idea of being able to use the spacebar to move a selection that has just been made is incredibly powerful. It will save you a ton of time. Is this working for everyone? Sure. Command D will deselect. So simply, you start your selection. It doesn't matter where you start it. So I'm just starting it up here. It doesn't matter where you start it. With my hand still down on the mouse is still down, or the trackpad is still down, hold down the spacebar, and then you can move this guy. And then you just want to line up the top left corner, let go of the space bar because it's now in place, and then simply drag out to finish your lower right-hand corner. And you've got it selected. Make sense? So while we're at this, one keyboard shortcut. Again, I always tell people I don't use any keyboard shortcuts at all. Not many. I say many, right? And then I'm gonna throw like 100 of them at you, and it's like, wow, I thought he said he didn't use many. But you know those keyboard shortcuts that are like, okay, hold down the MLJU key, the return, the delete, and the plus sign all at once, and it will do this for you. And I'm like, and I'm really going to remember that, right? So, but at any rate, if you do, one of the keyboard shortcuts that I do use all the time, and I'm going to show to you guys right now, is simply Command J. Command J is, you can think of it, the way most people think of it is jump. And basically, it is a quick copy and paste. So if you have that little red thing selected and you do Command J and you turn off this bottom layer, you'll see that it's created. It created a selection of that red. It copied it to the pasteboard, and then it pasted it into a new layer. And we use this all the time because we're constantly trying to get quick things up that we can actually work on their own, float on their own. Does this make sense? All right, so that's what I got going for you there. You can throw that top layer away if you've actually done it. We're going to look at some of the more the tools now. So again, I'm not going to go deal with a whole lot of those, the rest of those other tools. There are two that I want to show you that are here really quickly, and they are this. So it's the fourth tool down. If you come down there, this is something that we used to actually create the sky before. It was the quick selection tool and the magic wand tool. I want you to go ahead and pick the magic wand tool. I just want to show you something really quick with this guy. Now, most people don't believe that the magic wand tool, when it first came out, it was in a very early, it was like version 3 of Photoshop, not CS3, but version 3 like in 1985. And it was like, everybody was like, oh my God, it was like a miracle tool because nobody could do this kind of stuff before. And so, but anyway, it's been pretty orphaned. There's so many tools now that do so many other things in many ways better. So, but at any rate, it is what it is. Hey, Elise, can you start making a sign? Thanks. However, there are still times that the magic wand is actually a brilliant thing to use. And so, but I want to show you how to use it really quickly, and I want to talk to you about the difference in it. So if you take a look at your info palette here, so anyways, select drop-down menu, come down to Magic Wand. Again, you want to have your sample size of 3x3 average, a tolerance of 32. We're going to go ahead and leave this at 32, and I'll show you why in just a second. If you take a look at your info palette right up here, you can actually get, as you start to go over, I'm in the area that is the gradient, and this is just a normal gradient. So what this is, what we're looking at here, it's a file that I generated. It actually starts at black on this side. It's a gradient all over here to white on this side. It's a solid red stripe in the middle, and then on this bottom area, it's exactly the same gradient. Make sense? Okay, so if you hover your mouse over, so again, what I'm going to also do here is I'm going to have anti-allays checked. I'm going to leave contiguous off, and I'm going to leave sample all layers off because I've only got one layer, so it wouldn't really matter anyway. I'm going to run my cursor along this top, and what I'm looking at is my readout in the info palette. I want you to find the tone of gray that is a 100, 100, 100. So I'm going to come over just a little bit. So this is what I'm asking you guys to find. Everybody get that? And then click once. And what you'll see is that what you'll see in my case is you've got two sets of areas that have been selected. You guys have two, or do you only have one? Everybody got two? Okay, perfect. So in this case, if you then again hover your cursor right over this edge, right here like this, and you can read it out, you'll see it says 134. Now this is slightly inexact, but nonetheless, it is what it is. So what has happened here is I have told the Magic Wand tool that I want it to have a tolerance of 32, and what that's really saying is that wherever I click, it's going to look at the place that I click. So I clicked on that 100, 100, 100, and so what it does is, this is my 100 point, it adds 32, and it subtracts 32. So my range ends up being 68 to 132, or that's what it should be. Now, we did a 3x3 sample, so it's not perfect. You'll see this is reading 133, 134. That's because, again, we were doing a 3x3 sample. If we'd done a point sample, it would be different. But if I come down here and look at the other edge down here, you can see that, again, it is a 66. So it's close to my 68. It's within 2 points. Does that make sense what's going on? If you hit Command-J again and then turn off your bottom layer, you'll see that the tool is really precise. There's no real soft edge here. The reason that these edges are so choppy is that anti-aliasing thing that we had checked. Again, because we're not doing a point sample, it's not a perfect thing right here because our point sample is an average, but it gets close. But anyway, the reason we get this sort of like jaggedy edge. But the thing is that there's nothing that's really soft about this. And that was always the problem with the Magic Wand tool is that people would make selections with it, and they wouldn't seem real. They would seem almost kind of like an X-Acto knife kind of thing. And so this part didn't really work for a lot of people. I'm going to actually ask you to save that guy so it stays just like it is, but we're going to name it Magic Wand 32. That way we'll know that that's basically what it was. Turn on your original layer, make your original layer active again. You can turn off the top one. If you come up and you check this contiguous box and do the very same thing again, come back and find the area that we were actually looking for, that 100, and click again, you'll see that what happens is that you don't select both sides of it, because what this contiguous box is saying is whatever tone I select has got to be touching, it's got to be connected and touching the original point that you selected. So I selected the point here, it did the tones this way, but then when it started to move in this direction, it hit this red wall, and it can't go below. With that unchecked, it will pick those tones up anywhere in your image. It doesn't matter where. They don't need to be touching, they can be all over your image. So in many ways, having the contiguous unchecked is actually, it's a better way of selecting all the tones of a single image. Does that make, or specific ones? Yes? So, this is what it means. If you have, I do this all the time. Of course, I would just erase this, right? Start my life. So, these are pixels in an image. That's pixels that are really coming from the sensor of your camera, right? If you leave it at point sample, it selects one pixel and that's it. If you do a 3x3, it picks these 9 pixels and averages them together. And the reason you want to use that is that a single pixel can be an anomaly, a single pixel can be a dead pixel or a hot pixel. There can be something wrong with it. And because it's just a single pixel, you'll never know. You can't see it. So people use slightly larger area, slightly larger sample area. It ends up being, in the end, more accurate. Okay, so Command-D to deselect. However, if you come down now and you simply click on the red, the single best way there is to select solid graphics. So if you are ever given a graphic, somebody's done type, somebody's done InDesign, somebody's done any of that kind of stuff, whatever, and you want to make a selection that's really this well defined, the Magic Wand tool is your best friend. So how long did that take you to do that compared to the Marquee tool where I'm dragging out, spacebar down, setting it up, lining it up, coming across, hoping I got everything, not really sure if I did. Does that sort of make sense where we're going with all this, guys? Okay. While we're on this, you can go ahead and leave this selection going. I want to explore the select menu really quickly, just for a second here. If you come up to the select menu, yeah.
Mine selected like everything but like red. Because you were on the second layer.
Yeah.
I'll just put that.
Okay, so up to the select menu, I'm going to blow through this part pretty quickly only because we don't, there's a number of things in here we use, a number of things we don't use. So I'm simply going to go through this. Select all works like select all does in every computer program in the world. Command A will select everything. Command D, which we've already been using, deselect, so if you've got an active selection going, Command D. I rarely use Command A in these situations. I use Command D every day of my life. You'll use it as well. If we come down to inverse and click on that, now what most people think of when they invert something is they think that they're going to invert the tones. So for instance, if I was going to invert the tones, well, let's actually do an invert of the tone of the sky. Hit Command D to deselect. Come down to the sky and hit Command I. Command I is an image inversion. And so what's happened is that the gradient has flipped because it's the inverse, and my color has flipped as well. I went from the red to the complementary of red, which is cyan. So Command I again will invert that part again. I'm going to go back to the magic wand tool and click on the red one more time to make it active again. But now if I come up to the select menu and come down to inverse, I'm inverting the selection. So you'll see that in the original case I had the marching ants just going around the red, but now I've got the marching ants that are actually going around all of the gradient and all of the gradient down here. If you hit Command J again to jump this to its own layer and turn off the bottom one, you'll actually see that that was what the inverse selection was. Again, something that we will use all the time. The thing to be careful about is when we talk about inverting a selection, that's not inverting an image. Okie dokie, you can throw that guy away. We don't need him anymore. Back to the one I have. Magic. Oh, yeah. So all of these tools have shortcuts for them. Not all, but most of them have shortcuts here. So again, Jenny's a shortcut person. I'm not. I would never, ever in a million years remember this. I know it's not much, but no. At any rate. But it's a really good point because, again, I've got to be honest with you, it's probably to my detriment because, again, keyboard shortcuts tend to be really fast. And so it's just you're avoiding a trip back up to the menu again, right? So, but anyway. I'm not going to deal with any of this stuff right here. All of this is about selecting all your layers or not. Like, for instance, if you click on all layers, it highlights everybody. It just... For me, there's not a whole lot of reason to use all of these guys in here. We are going to come back to color range in a big way in just a second, but modify is where I want to go with you guys right now because modify we are going to use quite a bit in this class. So everybody's still got an active selection going around the red, right? Okay, so with the action sled going around the red, what I want to do is come down here and say contract. And a window will open up and it'll say, how many pixels do you want to contract? Now, this all depends on the size of your image. If you've got a really high-res image, 10 isn't going to be much of a contraction. If you've got a really low-res image, 10 can be a very big contraction. You never know until you do it. So I'm going to put in 10 pixels right here, and I'm going to say OK to that. And you can see it brought my selection in. It contracted it. Now, if you don't like that and you wanted to do a different amount of contraction, hit Command Z and go to the exact same menu again, up to Modify, down to Contract. And in this case, you could change it to 5 pixels and say OK. And you'll see it's contracted a little bit less. Make sense? Command Z to undo that. Back up to the same menu. Select, Modify, Expand. This is the other one we're going to go to. And Expand, say OK to 10 pixels, and you can see it jumps out. So that's basically what Expand and Contract are about. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. The next one in the Modify menu, up to Select, Modify, is Border. And in border, let's go ahead and do, let's do 10 pixels on that guy as well. And I'm going to say, okay, what happens with border is this. It actually looks, so we just did a 10 pixel border. And what it does is it's making a selection that is 5 pixels to the outside of where the original selection was and 5 pixels to the inside. Does this make sense what's going on here? So how many of you people in this room actually have done some compositing work up until now? Is that something you guys are interested in sort of like still pursuing and doing? So one of the problems that you run into when you're doing compositing is edge transition, right? You take something, you take a person that you shot in the studio and you stick them on the street, and there's this edge always around them where you know, depending on how well you cut it out, right? Now, part of the issue can be dealt with in using refined mask. That's one of the ways that we'll deal with those edges. But this becomes another way because this actually allows you to make very precise edge selections and then do things to them. For instance, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo this. Let's do one more of those. Up to the select menu, down to modify, down to, over to border. And then let's do 6 pixels instead. And you'll see it makes a really super fine one. Command J that to its own layer. And you will see now if you turn this off, you've got, you can't even see, oh, I was on my wrong layer, sorry. Let me go back. You'll see that you've got an extremely small amount of this edge right here, right? Then you simply run a Gaussian blur on this. Up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur, and you hit like a, let's say a half pixel radius edge on that, say okay. It will blend your newly cut out figure that you put in from the studio onto the street. It will take that edge and it will blend the two of them together in such a subtle way. It doesn't affect anything else. So it really becomes just sort of like a weird sort of like depth of field kind of issue that you get. We're going to get into this in a big way later on. I'm just trying to give you guys some reason why we're actually dealing with these modifications and how important the role they play. You can throw this guy away. You don't need to keep him anymore. Come back up and turn on this guy again. You see, oh, yeah, we will see what else we've actually got in here. I'm going to go ahead and load this guy one more time. Again, that selection right here. The last one down that we haven't really touched on, and we don't really use it a lot, and I'll tell you why, this modifier right here is smooth. Now you can come up and you can actually say a smooth on this one, and we'll see what actually happens on it, and you don't really pick anything up. What smooth is designed to do is this. I'm going to show it to you on the board because we really don't have an element in here that it'll actually work on. But imagine that you have got a corner that's actually in your image. We've got corners here, but this is not in my image. This corner would have to be over in here for this actually to work. But with this corner like this, what smooth does is it doesn't do any contraction or expansion on the sides, but it rounds the corner off. So this is what you end up with. Instead of that sharp corner, you end up with this. Smooth shows up in a lot of other tools as well, and that's what it's actually doing. So it's not going to have an impact on any of the straight sides. It's only sharp points. That's what it does, and it tends to knock that point off. That's pretty much what it's all about. So that's why you don't really see any fundamental change there, because there's nothing there to smooth. Oh, sorry.
Real quick again, how did you get the harsh lines to go out?
I simply clicked on it using the Magic Wand tool. I'm still got the Magic Wand tool still selected. So here, Command D to deselect, Magic Wand, working on your bottom layer, click right on the red.
No, I mean like when you had, when you had taken the boards or.
Before that, where I got just the little fine border around it?
Yeah, when you got the board, but then you smoothed that out. What was,
No, I blurred it. I'll show it to you again. I'll show it to you again really quick. So up to the select menu, down to modify border, and do the 6 pixel selection. I'm working on this layer right now. Command J copies that selection to its own layer. It's this guy right here. That's now on its own layer. And then I simply blurred it. Here, we'll zoom in really quick so you can see what happens. See, that's a really sharp, crisp edge. You know, not really what you want in compositing. It looks cut out. So, but because I've got this selection right here going, I simply want to blur it. So I'm going to come up to filter, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur. And you can see it softens that edge just a little touch. But the trick to it is, it's a very quick way to get the entire outline part of your image and then blend it with the background part of your image. And you'll see when we get deeper into the compositing part. Okay.
And would you be able to do that with not the Marquee tool, but like the Lasso tool or whatever?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you do that with the clip?
What we ultimately do, and we're going to get to today, is we make much, much, much better selections than any of the tools will give us.
Okay.
And then we do that trick based on those selections. So, yeah. Okay, one last thing I want to talk about here really quick. Again, I'm going to go back and simply load the red as a selection. Again, if I double click the hand, it zooms me all the way back out. Up to the select menu again, down to, we're going to leave off grow and modify, but I do want to talk about transform selection here really quickly. And when we do transform, let's do this instead. Let's do this instead, guys. I'm going to Command D this to deselect, If you've already done that transform, you have to come up here to the very top, and you will see there's a check mark or a circle with a line through it. I want to cancel this, so it's the circle with the line through it. It simply cancels it, and then Command D to deselect. Instead, what I would like to do is the Marquee tool. So hit the M key to get the Marquee tool, or come up to, it's the second tool on your drop-down menu, and simply drag a square out, or sort of a rectangle, just some big square hump into the middle of your image right here to sort of start this process with. You can transform selections, and to do it, you don't use, most of you guys know about transform, and it exists here in the edit menu, though this is all about transforming image, this stuff right here. If you want to transform your selection, it's up here in the select menu. This is where you actually do it. And here you can click on transform selection, and you'll see that you get a series of boxes that go around it, and this again will allow you to do just like all the transforms do. It'll allow you to rotate stuff. It'll allow you to do exactly what you can do with an image. Does that make sense? But the amazing one, I'm going to hit Command Z to just bring it back. The amazing one I always found is this one right here. It's this little grid right here. And this exists in the other tools as well. If we come over here and look at the transform edit tools, it is the warp tool is what is actually being used. But this is warping your transform warping your selection right now. So if you click on this tool, you'll see you get a grid that goes out onto your selection. And this grid has control points, and these control points allow you to modify the border of your selection. So, to see what that means is that if you come over here, I'm going to grab this little black point that's at the very top of my grid right here, and you'll see it is a handle that allows you to actually manipulate this image, or manipulate this selection, not this image. There's another one on the other side that will allow you to reset it, and they're sitting here at every single point. There's even ones here in the intersection that will allow you to move this as well. So this can now be, let's say this is now going to be our shape. To do this, go ahead and click the check mark. This is now your transform, and it is incredibly organic. And it is a remarkably effective way to select certain things in images that maybe aren't a perfect square, or maybe aren't something like, it's just a really quick way to actually build the lines in so that your selection is running exactly where you want it to run. Then if you hit Command J on this to jump it to its own thing, you'll see you can have these remarkably, this is a Marquee selection, yet it's incredibly organic. Make sense? Are there questions about any of this? You can throw that guy away if you've done it. A couple other things to get through, guys, and we'll take a quick break, and then we'll jump back and actually, we're going to work on your homework today. I know. Okay. The last thing that I want to deal with here quickly, only because we've already got the Magic Wand one up, is this. I want you to come up to the Select menu and come down to Color Range. Now, in color range, what ends up happening is that, how many of you guys, is anybody in this room familiar with color range? Have you guys ever used this stuff before? Okay, this was, again, it's fairly old technology, whatever, but it was a game changer when it first came out because of what it really let you do. Now, there are previews that will actually help. Your screen may look very, very different than mine. You'll see that my whole screen went completely black, and I'll show you what that means in just a second as soon as we make one. However, in the very top, you will actually see up here, there's a drop-down menu at the very top, and you can actually select very specific things. The problem with this is, in many ways, the problem with the preset colors is they tend to work, but they tend to be very unforgiving. So, for instance, at what point does red stop being red and become yellow? Where's that line? Who drew that line? Who established it? At what point does blue start to become cyan? Who said? So that's why these things are somewhat problematic, because you have no control over them. There's no way you can say, oh, well, this is the red that I want. It doesn't exist in this. So they're pretty much canned. However, if you come over and you click on the reds and say OK to that, you'll see that it previews, it selects the red perfectly, because that's a pure red, and it grabbed all of it. And there's just no issue with that at all. Does that sort of make sense? In the preview of this, you'll see that there's a little baby preview here that shows you what you're selecting, because I said I wanted to select the reds. Why, can you tell me, why is this area out here black and this area here white? What's going on? White is the selected area. It's actually thinking about building a mask for this. That's what it's going to do, right? And the white area would reveal, which would show the red, and the black would conceal, which would hide the whole rest of the image. Make sense? So that's why you're seeing what you're seeing here. However, most people feel like this little preview is like way too small, and it is way too small. So if you click on this drop-down menu right here, and you go from none to grayscale, it gives you, your image becomes your preview. It shows you everything that's supposed to be in the preview. You get the big version of it. So it's just much easier to see. Pretty much everybody I know, this is how they actually work with it. However, again, the problem with the reds and the greens and the blues and all the, it's like hyper-specific. So if we come down here, though, there are things that are possibly a little bit better, although these are still somewhat clunky because you don't really get to pick where the drop-off line is. When does a highlight become a midtone? Well, if you come down to highlights and you click on it, it will show you what the highlights are in this image. It's saying, okay, from this area into here are going to be highlights, and you'll see that there's a gray that's happening here. There's a transition of gray that's happening here, which is exactly how it should be. We are leaving from, this is like more selected, and as you start to get down here, it becomes less and less selected. By the time you get to this, they're considering this to be midtones in here, and this is to be shadows down in here. So you can see that it gives you a little bit of this part, whatever. If you take the fuzziness slider and you grab and drag it forward or backwards, you'll see that it actually changes that transition line for you. You can also click on the range, and the range will move that whole range for you. So you do have more control over highlights and shadows, ranges that you're picking, than you do on color, but not a lot. Again, there's better ways of making highlight, shadow, and midtone masks. But I just want to show you guys kind of what's going on in here. Make sense? In the drop-down menu again, at the very end of all of this is skin tones. This is designed to flag or to pick Caucasian skin tones. In my opinion, it does a relatively poor job of it. I don't know anybody who really uses it, so I'm just going to throw that one out for you there. And then there's also a way that you can select out of gamut. Again, there's not better ways of doing it. It's a fine way of doing it. But in most cases, when you're trying to select out of gamut stuff, it's because you've got a file that you're trying to remap what's out of gamut into what a printer can print, that kind of thing. Most of the software, the printing software, does a better job of remapping that than you'll ever do. So again, I don't find much reason to use this. But the one that I use all the time is the one at the very top, the sampled color one. And the sampled color one at the very top allows you to come into your image and pick an area. So I'm going to look at I'm going to set my fuzziness here to 32. I'm going to set it basically at the same tolerance that I did for my Magic Wand tool. And then I'm going to hover over this image, and what again I'm looking for is the radius. I'm looking for my readout numbers, my RGB numbers. I want to get on that 100 mark point so that I can compare what this tool does relative to what happens to the Magic Wand. So I'm just trying to get to 100. It's right there. I'm going to click once. You'll see that I've actually got a selection going, and I am going to then say, does this work for everybody? And you'll see that it sort of like falls off, which is exactly what it should do. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that, and I'm going to jump that to its own layer as well. Command J. I'm going to double click on that name, and I'm going to call it color range. Then I'm going to turn off the bottom one, and you can see that what's happening in this is this, and this is how the tool works, and this is what's different than the Magic Wand. Remember when we did the Magic Wand, we set our point at 100, and we did a tolerance of 32, so we got a full selection, a complete selection range of 68 up to 132, roughly. That's what our original was. If you turn on you should still actually have this layer here. If you turn this guy on, you'll see it's actually sitting up there. Again, really solid elements right here. If you turn this off, what you'll see, what happens with the color range is this. It does this exact same range, but everybody look up here really quickly. I need everybody to see what's really going on. In the Magic Wand tool, it's 100% of the range is selected, and that's it. But with color range, what happens is that this point right here at 100 is selected fully. But as you start to travel in this direction down to 68, it goes from 100%, so let's say this is our 100 point, but it's also 100% selected, down to at 67, this is dropped down to 0% selected. And it does it in a ramp. It's a gradient fall off. So it's not those hard edges, it ramps down like that. Does that make sense what's going on? The edges tend to be far more organic, they tend to be far more believable. When you work with them, they're far more successful, you'll be much, much, much happier. You don't get that really super cut out line look that you get when you actually use the magic wand. This guy is huge, people use it all the time. It's actually a great go-to tool, it should be one in your arsenal that you actually think about. We'll take a look at this in some real image work in just a second. Are there questions about this? All right. This seems like a perfect time to take a break. So I have got, let's just call it 20 after, if you guys could be back in 15 minutes, 35 after. Is that okay? This is a good time for a break, right? We're going to 4, right? Yeah, okay, perfect. Check.